It's October 2nd, and joining us is Eric Melillo, the Member of Parliament for the Kenora riding. It's James with NetNewsLedger. Joining us from Kenora is Kenora Federal Member of Parliament, Eric Melillo, who is working virtually from Kenora going into Ottawa. Eric, welcome to NetNewsLedger this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity again.
This is it's interesting times we're living in. We're starting to see COVID numbers showing up in the region. There's some of the First Nations, and I guess even in the Kenora School District, there's been some cases reported this week.
That's right. I think it shows the need to stay vigilant and not let our guard down. We have to continue following the health guidelines, whether it's hand washing, mask wearing, keeping our physical distance as much as possible. I think it shows that we're not quite out of the woods. I know a lot of people were. We had a lot of positive sentiment across Northern Ontario because we had so few cases. But we know with the fall coming and the inevitable second wave that seems to have already started in some parts of the country, we know we have to continue following those guidelines.
And the truth is, as we're finding out with, we've had good news. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole is back in the trail after testing positive. And then this morning, Donald Trump and the First Lady, Melania Trump, have tested positive for COVID. So there's no one who's exempt from this.
Absolutely. It's, it doesn't matter who you are. It's a virus. It spreads, and that's what they do, unfortunately. So we have to, we all have to do our part. And that's part of the reason why our party's actually been fighting for some greater access to rapid testing, because I know, especially in Northern Ontario, testing has been a big issue with long wait times to get a test, but also to get the result of the tests. People are waiting sometimes more than 2 weeks just to get their results of their test, and by that point they've been quarantined already for 2 weeks. So we're hoping to see the government take some action on getting those rapid tests as quickly as possible to help us adapt to this the second wave here in the fall.
Now, in the House of Commons this week, what do our readers and viewers need to know? What can you tell them?
Well, the big piece of legislation this week was Bill C4, which establishes the Canada Recovery Benefit, and that passed the House of Commons with the support of every single MP. And we actually voted on that at about 1:30 a.m. Central Time Wednesday morning. We were debating it all through the night, and in order to get it passed as quickly as possible, it's off to the Senate. I believe it should be passed in the Senate by the end of this week, possibly today. But it's a very important piece of legislation to ensure that there is no gap in benefits for those who are out of work through no fault of their own.
Now, one of the issues that we're starting to see, and in Thunder Bay in particular, the issue of homelessness. My partner was doing a prayer walk yesterday, and we were running into people in downtown Fort William who are sleeping outside. There's just, proverbially no room anywhere for people who are homeless, and especially on Indigenous people who are homeless. What can be done? I mean, it's a similar issue in Kenora as well. There's a lot of money gone to organizations from the federal government, but is it, in your view, is it getting down to where it needs to get to?
I think, I think overall, yes, the funding for whether it's through district service boards or different organizations, I think a lot of great work is being done with it. But there's such a gap that we need to overcome in this. We always talk about in Kenora, we talk about pieces of the puzzle in terms of providing adequate support for mental health and addictions, of course, the housing aspect or shelters, in terms of education opportunities. There's so many different reasons why people may end up in those vulnerable situations, and we have to have a strengthened system in place, not just one shelter or some housing units, but we need to have those social systems in place as well. So that's something we've been working with different organizations, with the government departments directly to ensure that that we can more adequately address this. But there certainly is a very big gap that we have to overcome.
It's a serious issue, and it's easy to sound, like until you're face to face with someone who, it was 2 degrees in Tampa Bay this morning, and you've got homeless people sleeping outside. The desperation that is going to happen from that is going to grow. And, it's been really exasperated by COVID because, social distancing in some of the shelters is down.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can take that issue from Kenora forward.
Yeah, I think COVID has shown us a lot. That a lot of in terms of what has been where our gaps existed prior to the pandemic when it comes to a number of different fronts, but particularly for vulnerable populations and homeless populations. And I think, if anything, COVID has also shown us that the government can very quickly spend billions of dollars to address anything that they view as a crisis. So I think there's no excuse anymore for these gaps to exist, whether it's folks who are homeless, whether it is the social systems that are lacking, whether it's the boil water advisories in many of our First Nations. There's no excuse for these issues to be so prevalent in our society, given how quickly the government has shown they can move to address a crisis and spend billions of dollars in order to get that done. I think it's really about what we are prioritizing as a government.
Do you think the government is setting the right priorities right now?
Well, right now, I think there's a bit of a disconnect. I think when we talk about some of the homeless issues, but also I think most recently in my mind is actually the issue of the boil water advisories on the First Nation communities. And the government has said that they're likely not to meet their 2021 deadline that they set. And we've actually seen an uptick in long-term boil water advisories added in my riding, but across all of northern Canada this year. And I think, obviously the bulk of our focus is on the COVID-19 response, but I worry that the government is using that as an opportunity to walk back their commitment to Indigenous peoples. And I think that in 2020, there's no reason why every single resident of Canada shouldn't have access to clean drinking water.
It's kind of interesting, the message from every politician, federally, government-wise, and provincially, wash your hands a lot. But if you're in a community where the water isn't safe to wash, that gets a little hard.
Absolutely, that's another thing that we see. It's not just boil water advisories. There are do not consume advisories or do not use advisories where the water isn't safe in any way. So there's definitely a health aspect to that as well. And just on the topic of the health, the COVID response in Indigenous communities, I think whether it's a potential inability to wash your hands properly, there's many housing shortages and overcrowding. In these communities, it's sometimes very difficult or impossible to actually properly physically distance. So that's why we see, as a result of COVID, a lot of these issues on the forefront of our minds, and we know that the government has to move to address them as quickly as possible.
Eric, heading into next week, what is going to be going on in the House of Commons before Thanksgiving?
So we're going to continue our debate on the speech from the throne, actually. So we haven't had that confidence vote yet. So that debate is going to continue. I believe it's going to take up most of the week. There might be a couple other motions that are escaping my mind right now, but that will be, as I understand, the focus of our debate and discussion. And I'll be happy to participate virtually, but looking forward to getting back to the House of Commons after Thanksgiving and fighting for Northern Ontario.
Eric, thank you again for taking the time. This is James with NetNewsLedger with Eric, the Member of Parliament federally from Kenora. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Have a good Friday.
You too.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Stay informed and stay up to date. Hit subscribe, hit like, share this with a friend. Make sure you hit the little bell so you get notified the next time that we have a video up. Thanks for tuning in to NetNewsLedger.